I made a decision recently that cost me about $12,000 a year. On paper, it's probably the dumbest thing I could have done given where I'm trying to go financially. But when I actually ran the numbers on what the money was really costing me, it wasn't even close. Here's exactly how I thought through it, and some rules and regulations I put in place to ensure that I wasn't absolutely screwing myself. So sometimes in your life there's these moments where you kind of have a turning point. Within a few weeks leading up to me quitting my job, I actually had one of these moments. To be clear, I didn't quit my main job as an engineer because this would be counterintuitive and against my goals. I did have a second job that I was working about 20 hours a week at and was bringing me in like $1,000 a month. This was really helping me get to my goals quicker and actually allowed me to buy my Corvette. But I realized it was actually slowing me down in the long term. I wasn't taking enough risk investing myself, which didn't make sense. If I could work so hard in school and learn about life and all of its complexities, why wasn't I going to invest essentially $1,000 a month into my own future by taking my time and putting it into something more valuable? Now, I didn't do this to just bullshit around. I did this for like real life shit. So anyways, the justification for me quitting was essentially that I was able to pick up weekends on my engineering job. Since I'm not actually graduated, I don't get paid salary and I'm on an hourly wage. This means I get overtime. I was essentially able to make a very similar amount of money by just working a few hours on the weekends on something that I actually loved. I was putting so much effort into this other job, so much brain energy, and I realized that I could either be putting this into my main job, right, and becoming a better skilled engineer, or I could be putting that energy into things like YouTube or starting up my engineering sort of freelance company, and also have a lot more time for getting into real estate, as that's what I'm trying to do this year. I had a sort of epiphany. That was, I could just take back almost a day a week in time that I could put into something valuable that could give me so much more fulfillment and bring more value to other people in society writ large, rather than what I was doing for an extra $1,000 a month so I could pay for things that I wanted to do without having to really think about it. I realized that I was working really hard but being lazy and kinda somewhat selfish. I had garnered within the last year so much engineering experience, and this can apply to any of you who may be wanting to get into a field that will drastically improve lives of others if you can get really good. But anyways, I realized what I was doing on the side was actually really not helping a whole lot of people, and that kind of discouraged me a little bit. So I couldn't help but think, what the fuck am I doing here when I'm at this job? Now, I'm not gonna say I regret taking this job. I definitely don't, and for the year of me building up my skills in engineering, it actually made sense, because really I had no other super valuable skills that people would be willing to hire at very flexible hours. So I just picked up a fast food job, and this really helped me. But like I said, over the long term, this actually started turning into somewhat of a detriment. After a year and a few months of being in my main role as an engineer and becoming really better overall in just a year's time, I realized that I could do so much more. I realized that if I wanted to not only be great for myself, but again, provide the most value to society, I had to be taking more risks and more things that would matter in the long term and provide more value to people other than flipping burgers. Okay, so that's that, but what exactly is my plan? I basically just lost $1,000 a month, and even if I'm going to be making up some of that by, maybe putting in more hours at this main job I have, it's not like I'm actually gaining a whole lot back other than a couple of hours. Those could easily be wasted on Instagram Reels, for example, if you're not careful, which is very true. Essentially only gaining back like 10 hours a weekend, because like I said, I'm probably putting in more hours at my main job. However, what I can do in these 10 to 15 hours is so much less mind-numbing than what I was doing before. Because I have the ability to be disciplined, I can put that into something productive, like making these videos and helping teach people how to actually go about quitting your 9 to 5 or quitting a job that you hate, and then transitioning into something you love. And like I said, that 10 hours could also go into my freelancing, where I offer basically on-demand engineering services to companies with high demand in controls engineering. A lot of smaller companies don't actually want to like hire full-time employees, especially for like temporary influxes of orders. So I'd be like the person they hire. Do you see how I'm providing value to real things, to real solutions that will help thousands of people in the industry and therefore pass it on to the consumer? If you're looking to quit your job, you have to understand that this is the primary thing that you need to be focused on in the meantime. Mind you, I didn't just quit without having a plan and without having evidence that I could actually implement this. Don't be quitting your job just because you think you can do this shit, even though you absolutely have no evidence that you can. Don't be arrogant, but also don't waste your time with something that you absolutely dread. If you're quitting your job, what you should be aiming for is replacing your income and being able to scale. Make sure before you're quitting your job, you can easily replace 75% of your income with your actual job. So you should be building up that side business until you can basically prove that you can sustain off of that job. And this should be over 3 or a 4-month period, I would say, minimum, just so you can prove that this is not just a fluke month. So I would absolutely recommend quitting your job. It is so freeing, but make sure you have a plan. And also, don't be a fucking bum about it. So this was my 2 cents and my experience of quitting my 9 to 5 job, sort of my justification. Maybe you guys can extrapolate this out into your own lives. And yeah, I hope this helps.